I am Lana, 32 years old, and I had the perfect engagement to James until my family turned it into a nightmare. The day that was supposed to be filled with champagne toasts and congratulations became a battlefield when my father demanded I surrender my $50,000 wedding fund to my gambling addict brother. When I refused, he slapped me so hard I saw stars. Little did he know I had prepared for his outburst. Before we dive into how I turned this family betrayal into an unexpected triumph, drop a comment letting me know where you are watching from and hit that subscribe button to join my journey of standing up against toxic family dynamics. Growing up in our suburban home in Maryland, I quickly learned that my father Robert had very specific expectations. He was the undisputed ruler of our household, making decisions that nobody dared question, especially not my mother Diana. She was always quiet, accommodating, and seemed to exist in his shadow. I remember dinner conversations where she would start expressing an opinion only to be cut off with a sharp glare from my father. "Diana, nobody asked for your input," he would say, and she would immediately fall silent, eyes downcast. From an early age, the difference in how my father treated me versus my brother Todd was painfully obvious. Todd could do no wrong in his eyes. When Todd broke my science project the night before it was due in 5th grade, my father laughed it off as boys being boys. When Todd crashed the car at 16, my father bought him a newer, better model, claiming he needed a more reliable vehicle. Meanwhile, every achievement I earned was met with scrutiny or dismissal. When I earned a full academic scholarship to college, my father barely looked up from his newspaper. "I suppose that saves us some money," was all he said, never acknowledging the countless nights I had stayed up studying while Todd was out partying. College became my escape. I worked 3 part-time jobs in addition to maintaining my scholarship. The library became my sanctuary, and finance became my passion. There was something deeply satisfying about understanding money management, perhaps because at home, money had always been used as a control mechanism by my father. By my senior year, I had secured an internship at a prestigious financial firm, which turned into a job offer upon graduation. Moving into my own apartment was the most liberating experience of my life. For the first time, I could breathe without feeling my father's disapproval weighing on my chest. My career as a financial advisor flourished over the next decade. I found that I had a talent for helping people understand their finances and plan for their futures. My client list grew, and so did my confidence. I made partner at my firm by 30-something that would have seemed impossible when I was growing up under my father's dismissive gaze. It was at a charity gala for financial literacy that I met James. He was volunteering teaching budgeting skills to underprivileged teenagers, and his genuine enthusiasm captivated me immediately. We started talking about compound interest of all things and ended up closing down the venue still deep in conversation. James was everything my father was not. He was kind, supportive, and actually listened when I spoke. He celebrated my successes without feeling threatened by them. His family was equally wonderful. The first time I had dinner with them, his mother Susan hugged me like she meant it, and his father William asked thoughtful questions about my work and actually seemed interested in the answers. Our relationship grew steadily over 3 years. During that time, I started setting aside money specifically for a wedding fund. It might seem old-fashioned, but after years of financial insecurity in my childhood home, having that money gave me a sense of control and independence. Every month, I would transfer a portion of my earnings into that account, watching with satisfaction as it grew toward my $50,000 goal. Meanwhile, Todd's gambling problem had escalated from casual sports betting in college to serious addiction. He would call me late at night, desperate for money to cover his losses, promising it was the last time. The first few times I helped him, believing his promises to get help. But it became clear that my assistance was enabling his addiction, not helping him overcome it. Our parents continued to bail him out regardless of the consequences. When Todd lost his apartment because he gambled away his rent money, our father paid for a new place, a nicer one than before. When Todd's car was repossessed, our father bought him another. Each time my mother would call me afterward, her voice tired. "Your brother is going through a tough time," she would say. "We need to support him." I felt a complicated mix of resentment and guilt. I resented that Todd received endless support despite his self-destructive choices, while I had to fight for even basic recognition. Yet I also felt guilty for my resentment, as if I was a bad sister for not wanting to keep throwing money into the black hole of his addiction. James proposed on our anniversary trip to Hawaii under a sky full of stars on a secluded beach. The ring was perfect, modest, but elegant, exactly what I would have chosen myself. I said yes immediately, tears of joy streaming down my face. For once, my life felt perfectly on track. When we returned, James suggested we host an engagement party. I was hesitant about inviting my family, but James, ever the optimist, thought it might be a good opportunity for healing. "Maybe seeing how happy we are will help them understand," he said, squeezing my hand reassuringly. I wanted to believe him, so I agreed to book the private dining room at Azure, an upscale restaurant downtown. I sent formal invitations to my parents and Todd, along with James's family and our closest friends. Despite my reservations, a small part of me hoped that this special occasion might finally earn my father's approval. Looking back, I should have known better. The evening of our engagement party arrived with perfect spring weather. The private room at Azure looked magical, with soft lighting from crystal chandeliers reflecting off the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city skyline. White roses and baby's breath centerpieces adorned each table, and champagne flutes were arranged in neat rows at the bar, ready to be filled for toasts. James and I arrived early to greet our guests. He looked handsome in his navy suit, his dark hair neatly styled, and his smile bright with excitement. I had chosen a silver cocktail dress that made me feel confident and beautiful with my grandmother's pearl earrings as my something borrowed. "You look stunning," James whispered, kissing my cheek as we positioned ourselves near the entrance. His family arrived first, his parents William and Susan bearing a beautifully wrapped gift and warm hugs. James's younger sister Allison immediately grabbed my hands and insisted on seeing the ring again, exclaiming over its beauty. His older brother Michael and his wife Jessie followed their genuine congratulations, making me feel truly welcomed into their family. "We are so happy to have you joining our family," Susan said, squeezing my hands. "James has never been happier." William nodded in agreement. "You two complement each other perfectly. We could not have hoped for a better partner for our son." Their warmth made my chest tighten with emotion. This was what family support should feel like. My college friends arrived next, Sarah leading the charge with her infectious laugh and tight hug. "I knew from the moment you mentioned James that he was the one," she said. "Remember how you couldn't stop smiling when you talked about him after that charity event?" The room gradually filled with people who genuinely cared about us. The notable absence was my family, who were already 20 minutes late. James noticed my frequent glances toward the door and gently touched my back. "They will come," he assured me, though I could hear the slight doubt in his voice. Just as I was about to call them, my parents walked in with Todd trailing behind them. I hadn't expected my brother to come, and his presence immediately set me on edge. He looked disheveled, his shirt partially untucked, and his eyes darting around the room nervously. He kept checking his phone, slipping it in and out of his pocket, as if expecting an urgent message. My father Robert surveyed the room with a critical eye, his mouth set in a tight line that I recognized as disapproval. My mother Diana followed his lead as always, though she managed a small smile when she saw me. Neither of them had dressed particularly formally, making it clear this occasion wasn't important to them. "Congratulations, sweetheart," my mother said, giving me a quick hug. My father merely nodded. "Quite a fancy venue you've chosen. Must have cost a pretty penny." I felt the familiar tension creep into my shoulders. James and I wanted someplace special to celebrate with everyone. "Well, some of us work for a living instead of throwing money around," he replied, his gaze sweeping dismissively over the elegant room. James stepped forward, extending his hand. "Thank you for coming, Robert, Diana, Todd. We're really happy you could be here to celebrate with us." My father shook James's hand with obvious reluctance. Todd mumbled a congratulations while continuing to scan the room as if looking for escape routes. I noticed he seemed jumpy, more agitated than usual. As the evening progressed, the contrast between James's family and mine became increasingly apparent. William engaged everyone in pleasant conversation, while my father made passive-aggressive comments about the cost of the wedding venue we were considering. Susan helped distribute champagne for toasts, while my mother sat quietly, speaking only when directly addressed. "Your work as a financial advisor must be so rewarding," James's mother said during dinner. "James tells us you have quite a following of clients who trust you implicitly." Before I could respond, my father interjected. "She pushes papers around and charges people for advice they could get online for free." An uncomfortable silence fell over our section of the table. James's father cleared his throat. "Actually, from what James has told us, Lana has helped many people secure their financial futures. That's important work." I shot William a grateful look as conversation awkwardly resumed. Midway through the appetizers, I excused myself to use the restroom and overheard Todd arguing with someone on his phone in the hallway. "I just need more time," he was saying, his voice strained with panic. "I can get the money, I swear. Just a few more days." When he saw me, he abruptly ended the call and plastered on a fake smile. "Great party, sis. James seems like a good guy." "Is everything okay, Todd?" I asked, concerned despite myself. "Yeah, totally fine. Just some work stuff." The lie was obvious, but I didn't press him. This wasn't the time or place. When I returned to the table, I noticed my father and Todd huddled in conversation, their heads close together. My father's expression was grave, and Todd looked on the verge of tears. Whatever they were discussing, it couldn't be good. James's father stood to make a toast, raising his glass with a warm smile. "To Lana and James." When James first told us about meeting a brilliant financial advisor at that charity event, we knew she must be special to have caught our son's attention. Seeing you together these past 3 years has only confirmed what we suspected from the start. You balance each other perfectly, supporting each other's dreams and bringing out the best in each other. We are honored to welcome you into our family, Lana, and we look forward to many happy years of watching your love grow. Everyone raised their glasses, murmuring agreement. Everyone except my father, who was still whispering urgently to Todd. As the main course was served, my father finally turned his attention to the table, but the look in his eyes sent a chill down my spine. I recognized that expression from childhood. It was the look he got right before everything exploded. Something was very wrong, and I was about to find out what. The tension at our table continued to build as the main course was served. My father kept shooting pointed glances at me while picking at his salmon with obvious disinterest. Todd had downed 3 glasses of wine in quick succession and was starting on his 4th, his movements becoming increasingly uncoordinated. "So," my father said during a lull in conversation, his voice carrying that dangerous edge I recognized from childhood, "tell us about these extravagant wedding plans of yours, Lana." I took a sip of water, trying to stay calm. "We're thinking of a ceremony at the Botanical Gardens next spring. Nothing too elaborate, but meaningful to us." "And the cost for this not-too-elaborate affair," he made air quotes around the words, his tone mocking. James reached under the table and squeezed my knee supportively. "We have a reasonable budget worked out," he said. My father's eyes narrowed. "I'm asking my daughter, not you." An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. James's parents exchanged concerned glances. "We have it under control," I said firmly. "I've been saving for this specifically. I have $50,000 set aside in my wedding fund." I said it with pride. That money represented years of careful planning and delayed gratification, a testament to my financial discipline. Todd choked on his wine, sputtering loudly. My mother quickly passed him a napkin, her hands trembling slightly. 50,000, my father repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. "For one day, when your brother is struggling." My mother placed a hand on his arm. "Robert, this isn't the time or place to discuss family matters." He shook her off roughly. "When is it the time, Diana, when Todd is dead in a ditch somewhere?" Several heads turned at nearby tables. James's mother, Susan, tried to salvage the situation. "The salmon is exceptional tonight, isn't it? We must compliment the chef." No one acknowledged her attempt to change the subject. Todd was now visibly sweating, gulping his wine, and avoiding everyone's eyes. "Dad," I said quietly, "can we talk about whatever is bothering you later? This is supposed to be a celebration." "A celebration of what?" he snapped. "Your selfishness. Your brother needs help, real help, and you're throwing money away on flowers and cake." James straightened in his chair. "Sir, with all due respect, this isn't appropriate conversation for an engagement party." My father's face reddened. "Don't tell me what's appropriate in my own family, young man." "Robert," James's father, William, interjected, "perhaps we could all take a moment to remember why we're gathered here tonight." My father ignored him, his attention focused entirely on me now. "Did you know your brother owes money to people who don't take IOUs? Did you know he could be in real danger?" Todd hung his head, shame evident in every line of his body. My mother was quietly crying now, dabbing at her eyes with her napkin. My college friend Sarah, who had witnessed many of my family's dysfunctions over the years, tried to catch my eye with a look of support. The restaurant manager had noticed the commotion and was hovering nearby, clearly concerned about the escalating situation. "Whatever Todd's problems are," I said carefully, "they weren't caused by my wedding fund, and they won't be solved by it either." My father slammed his palm on the table, making the silverware jump. "That's enough," he shouted, standing up suddenly. The entire restaurant fell silent, all eyes turning to our table. My father seemed beyond caring about the spectacle he was creating. He pointed a finger at me, trembling with rage. "Everyone listen up," he announced loudly. "My selfish daughter here has $50,000 saved for a frivolous party, while her brother owes $45,000 to dangerous people who have threatened his life, people who break kneecaps first and ask questions later." Gasps echoed around the room. James stood up beside me, his arm protectively around my shoulders. "Sir, that's enough," he said firmly. My father ignored him, his attention focused solely on me. "You are going to give your wedding fund to your brother right now. Sign it over tonight or this engagement is off." I felt as though I had been doused in ice water. "Excuse me. You heard me. Your brother needs that money more than you need fancy centerpieces. If you have any family loyalty at all, you'll do the right thing." James's grip on my shoulder tightened. "That's not your decision to make," he said. I found my voice then rising to stand beside James. "No, Dad. I will not give Todd my wedding fund. Not tonight, not ever." My father's face contorted with rage. "You ungrateful little—" "Todd's gambling addiction isn't my responsibility," I continued, my voice growing stronger. "I've tried to help him before, and the money just disappeared into more gambling. He needs real help, not another bailout." "You think you're so much better than everyone else with your fancy job and your perfect fiancé," my father snarled, stepping around the table toward me. James moved slightly in front of me, but I gently pushed him aside. This was my battle. "I don't think I'm better than anyone," I said, "but I do think I deserve to use my own money for my own wedding." What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. My father's face turned a dangerous shade of purple. He lunged forward, his hand raised, and before anyone could react, he slapped me across the face with such force that I stumbled backward, catching myself on a nearby chair. The sound of the slap echoed through the silent restaurant. Someone gasped. James immediately moved between us, his face a mask of cold fury. I straightened up, my cheek burning, and looked my father directly in the eyes. "You're about to get a surprise you'll never forget," I said, my voice steady, despite the tears threatening to spill. He laughed dismissively. "What are you going to do, cry to your fiancé?" The restaurant manager stepped forward. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave immediately." "This is a family matter," my father growled. "Assaulting someone in my restaurant is a police matter," the manager replied firmly. As if on cue, 2 uniformed police officers walked through the entrance of the private dining room. My father froze mid-retort, his expression shifting from rage to shock as he realized what was happening. The lead officer, a tall woman with a stern expression, surveyed the scene. "We received a 911 call about an assault in progress. Is everyone okay here?" All eyes turned to me as I stepped forward, my hand still pressed to my stinging cheek. "I'm the one who called," I said. "And no, everything is not okay." The restaurant had fallen into complete silence, the only sound the soft music playing overhead and the approaching footsteps of the police officers. My father stood frozen, his hand still partially raised, as if he couldn't process what was happening. "You called the police," he finally sputtered, disbelief written across his face. "On your own father." I nodded, fighting to keep my voice steady. "I called them during your ultimatum. I knew where this was heading." The female officer, whose nameplate read Johnson, approached me with a professional but compassionate demeanor. "Ma'am, can you tell me what happened here?" I took a deep breath. My father just slapped me across the face because I refused to give my brother my wedding savings. Officer Johnson turned to the room. "Did anyone witness this assault?" Nearly every hand in the room went up. James's father, William, stepped forward. "I saw the whole thing. This man," he pointed at my father, "threatened his daughter and then struck her with enough force that she nearly fell." The restaurant manager approached with a tablet in hand. "We also have security cameras in the private dining rooms. I can provide the footage immediately." My father's face had drained of all color. "This is ridiculous. It was a family disagreement that got a little heated. You cannot be serious about arresting me." The second officer, a younger man with a serious expression, stood beside my father. "Sir, assault is a criminal offense regardless of family relation." Todd suddenly found his voice stepping forward unsteadily. "Wait, please. This is all my fault. I'm the one who owes the money. Dad was just trying to help me." "By physically assaulting his daughter?" Officer Johnson asked skeptically. My mother finally spoke up, her voice barely above a whisper. "He didn't mean it. He just gets angry sometimes." "And how often does his anger result in physical violence, ma'am?" Officer Johnson asked. My mother fell silent, looking down at her hands. James stood beside me, his arm around my shoulders. "Are you okay?" he whispered. I nodded, though my cheek still stung, and my heart was racing. The adrenaline coursing through my body made everything seem slightly surreal, as if I was watching the scene unfold from a distance. Todd approached the officers, swaying slightly from the alcohol. "Look, I'm in trouble. I owe money to some dangerous people. They've been threatening me. My dad was just desperate to help me." "What kind of trouble?" the male officer asked. Todd looked at the floor. "Gambling debts, $45,000, to people you don't want to owe money to." Officer Johnson made a note in her small notebook. "And this led to your father assaulting your sister because he wanted her to give me her wedding fund." Todd admitted shame evident in his voice. "She saved $50,000 for her wedding, and Dad thought she should give it to me instead." The absurdity of the situation seemed to dawn on the officers. "So you assaulted your daughter because she wouldn't give up her wedding savings to cover your son's gambling debts," Officer Johnson clarified, looking at my father. My father's expression hardened. "You don't understand. These people Todd owes money to, they make threats. Real threats. They showed up at his apartment last week. This isn't just about money, it's about his safety. Then the appropriate action would be to report those threats to the police, not assault your daughter," Officer Johnson replied firmly. The male officer was speaking quietly into his radio, requesting information on reported loan shark activities in the area. My mother stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. "Please, officer, my husband has a temper, but he's never done anything like this before. He's just worried about Todd." I couldn't let that stand. "That's not true, Mom. Dad has always used intimidation to control us. The only difference is that this time he did it in public with witnesses." My mother looked at me with an expression of betrayal, but underneath I could see something else. Relief, perhaps, as if a long-held secret was finally seeing the light of day. The officers conferred quietly for a moment before Officer Johnson turned to my father. "Sir, turn around and place your hands behind your back." "You cannot be serious." My father sputtered, his face flushing with anger again. "I am completely serious. You're under arrest for assault. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney." As Officer Johnson continued reciting the Miranda rights, the male officer carefully handcuffed my father. The reality of the situation seemed to finally sink in, and my father's bluster deflated, replaced by a look of stunned disbelief. Todd collapsed into a chair, burying his face in his hands. "I'm so sorry, Lana. This is all my fault. I never thought it would come to this." My mother stood helplessly between my father and Todd, as if unable to decide which crisis to address first. The officers began leading my father toward the exit. As they passed me, he looked at me with an expression I had never seen before. Not anger, but genuine confusion, as if he couldn't comprehend how his actions had led to this moment. "We'll need statements from witnesses," Officer Johnson informed the room. "If everyone could please remain for a few minutes, my colleagues will be arriving shortly to take your information." As my father was escorted out of the restaurant, James's mother Susan approached me with concern in her eyes. "Oh, Lana, are you all right? Let me get you some ice for your cheek." The restaurant manager was already approaching with an ice pack wrapped in a clean towel. "I am so sorry this happened in our establishment," he said sincerely. "Your meal is of course on the house tonight." I accepted the ice pack, gratefully pressing it against my throbbing cheek. The enormity of what had just transpired began to sink in. I had just had my father arrested at my own engagement party. James gathered me into a gentle embrace. "I am so proud of you," he whispered. "That took incredible courage." My friend Sarah squeezed my arm supportively. "He crossed a line, Lana. You did the right thing." As additional officers arrived to take statements, Todd approached me cautiously. "Can we talk, please?" I nodded, too emotionally exhausted to refuse. We stepped away from the group to a quiet corner. "I never asked him to do this," Todd said, his eyes red-rimmed. "I swear. I told him about the debt, yes, but I never suggested he demand your wedding fund." "Then why didn't you stop him?" I asked. Todd looked away. "I was desperate. I still am. These guys, they're not joking around. Last week they broke into my apartment and left a dead rat on my bed with a note saying I was next." Despite everything, I felt a stab of concern for my brother. "Why didn't you go to the police?" Dad said he would handle it, that it would make things worse if authorities got involved. Todd ran his hands through his hair. "I should have known his idea of handling it would be to make it someone else's problem. My problem became your problem, just like always." I looked at my brother clearly, perhaps for the first time. Behind the addiction and the poor choices, he was just as much a victim of our father's toxic control as I was. The difference was that I had escaped while Todd had remained trapped in the cycle of dependency. "I need help, Lana," he admitted, his voice breaking. "Real help, not money. I need to get clean." Before I could respond, the male officer approached us. "Sir, we'd like to take your statement about these threats you've mentioned. If you're being extorted or threatened by loan sharks, that's a separate criminal investigation we need to pursue." As Todd was led away to give his statement, I stood in the ruins of what should have been one of the happiest nights of my life, wondering how we would ever move forward from here. The week following my engagement party was a blur of police statements, tearful phone calls, and difficult conversations. James and I retreated to my apartment, creating a sanctuary away from the chaos. My friend Sarah came over frequently, bringing comfort food and offering her unwavering support. 3 days after the arrest, my mother requested to visit. I was hesitant, but James encouraged me to hear her out. "You don't have to forgive anyone," he said gently, "but it might help to understand what's going on." When my mother arrived, she looked smaller somehow, as if the events of the past week had physically diminished her. The confident facade she usually maintained for the outside world had crumbled, revealing the insecure woman beneath. "Thank you for seeing me," she said, as she perched nervously on the edge of my sofa. "I know you probably hate me right now." "I don't hate you, Mom," I replied truthfully. "I just don't understand how you could stand by all these years and watch Dad treat us the way he did." She twisted her wedding ring anxiously. "It wasn't always like this. When we first married, your father was ambitious, determined. I admired his strength, but over time that strength turned into something else, something controlling." "Why didn't you ever stand up to him?" I asked. Tears filled her eyes. "There's something you don't know, Lana, something I've never told you or Todd." She took a deep breath. "When my parents died, I inherited a substantial amount of money, nearly $300,000. This was news to me. What happened to it? Your father convinced me to let him invest it, said he had inside information on some business ventures that would double our money within a year." She laughed bitterly. "Instead, he gambled it all away on high-risk stocks that failed, every penny gone within 6 months." I sat back, stunned by this revelation. "So that's where Todd gets it from. Dad has a gambling problem, too." She nodded. "He never admitted it was gambling, called it aggressive investing, but the result was the same. By the time I realized what had happened, I was pregnant with Todd and completely dependent on your father financially." "Why didn't you leave?" James asked gently. "I had nowhere to go, no money of my own." "Your father took control of our finances after that, saying I couldn't be trusted with money. He gave me an allowance like a child, and then came the threats." "Threats?" I felt a chill run down my spine. "He said if I ever left him, he would make sure I ended up with nothing, that no judge would grant custody to an unemployed mother with no financial sense, that he would destroy me." She wiped away tears. "Maybe I should have been stronger for you kids, but I was scared, and the longer it went on, the harder it became to imagine a way out." I moved to sit beside her, taking her hand. "I had no idea." "There's more," she continued. "Your father's company has been investigating him for financial irregularities. He's been taking money cooking the books. That's why he was so desperate for Todd's debt to be paid. It wasn't just about Todd's safety. Your father needed that money to replace what he took before the annual audit." The pieces were starting to fit together. "So this wasn't really about helping Todd at all?" My mother shook her head. "It was about saving himself, as always. Todd's situation just gave him a convenient excuse to demand your money. If the company discovers what he's done, he could face criminal charges far more serious than the assault." James looked troubled. "Does Todd know any of this?" "No," my mother admitted. "Your father has always enabled Todd's worst behaviors while simultaneously making him feel like a failure. It's a perfect system of control. Keep Todd dependent and desperate, and he remains loyal to your father no matter what." I thought about all the times my father had bailed Todd out of trouble, always with strings attached, always with a lecture about responsibility that somehow never translated into actual consequences. It was a twisted form of manipulation disguised as parental concern. "I'm filing for divorce," my mother said suddenly, her voice stronger than I had ever heard it. "After 35 years, I'm finally done. The police involvement made me realize this won't stop until I make it stop." I was shocked, but pleased. "Where will you go?" "My sister in Arizona has offered her guest house until I get on my feet. I've been secretly applying for jobs online. With my business degree, even though it's old, I should be able to find something entry-level." "What about Todd?" I asked. "He's agreed to enter a rehabilitation program. The police put him in touch with a gambling addiction specialist, and for the first time he seems genuinely willing to get help." She squeezed my hand. "The officer told him that if he cooperates with their investigation into these loan sharks, they might be able to work out some kind of protection for him." I felt a complex mixture of emotions. Relief that things were changing, sadness for the years lost to my father's control, worry about my mother and brother's futures, and underneath it all, a lingering anger that it had taken such a dramatic public incident for these truths to finally emerge. "Mom," I said carefully, "I want to support you and Todd through this, but I need to establish some boundaries. I can't be financially responsible for either of you, and I need to focus on healing myself and building my future with James." She nodded quickly. "Of course. You've carried too much already. This is our mess to clean up, not yours." James, who had been quietly supportive throughout the conversation, spoke up. "Lana and I have been discussing postponing the wedding for a bit, not because we're any less committed to each other, but because we think it's important to work through all of this first." "That seems wise," my mother agreed. "A wedding should be a joyful occasion, not overshadowed by family drama." We spent the next few hours talking more openly than we ever had before. My mother shared stories from her early life, her dreams before she met my father, her regrets about not protecting Todd and me more effectively. For the first time, I saw her as a complete person with her own struggles and failures, not just as my passive mother. Before she left, she hugged me tightly. "I am so proud of the woman you've become, Lana, and I am so sorry for every time I failed to stand up for you." After she departed, James and I sat in thoughtful silence for a while. "Family therapy," he finally said. "For you, your mom and Todd. Not your dad, at least, not initially. But the three of you need to rebuild from the ground up." I nodded, leaning against his shoulder. "I think you're right. And individual therapy for you," he added gently. "What happened at the engagement party was just the culmination of years of dysfunction. That doesn't heal overnight." I knew he was right, though. Part of me wanted to just move forward and pretend none of this had happened. But ignoring wounds didn't heal them. It just allowed them to fester beneath the surface. "What about your family?" I asked. "After witnessing all that drama, they probably think they're marrying into a reality show." James laughed. "Actually, my mom called this morning while you were in the shower. She wanted to make sure you were okay and to let you know that they're still thrilled to have you joining the family, drama and all." For the first time in days, I felt a genuine smile spread across my face. "I really lucked out with your family." "We both did," James replied. "And we're going to build our own family with better patterns, healthier boundaries, and a lot more love." I squeezed his hand, grateful beyond words for his steady presence in the storm. The county courthouse was imposing with its marble columns and formal atmosphere. I sat on a hard wooden bench outside courtroom B waiting for my father's hearing. It had been 6 weeks since the engagement party incident, and this was the first time I would see him since his arrest. James sat beside me, his silent support a balm to my nerves. On my other side was my mother, who looked years younger already, the constant tension that had lined her face beginning to fade. She had moved to Arizona 2 weeks prior, but had flown back specifically for this hearing. Todd sat across from us, fidgeting with his sobriety chip from Gamblers Anonymous. He was 21 days into his 90-day rehabilitation program and was allowed to attend the hearing as part of his therapy process. He looked healthier already, the haunted look in his eyes diminished, though not completely gone. "Are you sure you want to deliver the victim impact statement in person?" James asked me quietly. "The prosecutor said you could submit it in writing." I nodded. "I need to say these words to him directly. For me, not for him." The courtroom doors opened and we filed inside. My father was already there with his attorney, and our eyes met briefly before he looked away. He seemed diminished, somehow his usually imposing presence reduced in the formal setting of the courtroom. The proceedings began with the judge reviewing the case. My father had agreed to plead guilty to misdemeanor assault in exchange for a suspended sentence probation and mandatory anger management classes. The prosecutor had consulted with me about the plea deal, and I had agreed not wanting to drag the process out further. When it came time for my victim impact statement, I approached the podium with a steady stride, the paper with my prepared words clutched in my hand. I had worked on this statement with my therapist, ensuring it expressed my truth without being vengeful. "Your Honor," I began, my voice clear in the hushed courtroom. The physical pain of being slapped by my father was nothing compared to the lifetime of emotional abuse that preceded it. For as long as I can remember, my father used money intimidation and emotional manipulation to control our family. What happened at my engagement party was simply the first time his behavior was witnessed by people outside our family system. I looked directly at my father as I continued. The most damaging part of growing up with this kind of abuse is how it becomes normalized. You begin to believe that love and control are the same thing, that family loyalty means enduring mistreatment, that speaking up is a betrayal. These are dangerous lessons that follow you into adulthood and into your own relationships. My father shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his eyes now fixed on the table in front of him. I am not standing here today asking for punishment, I continued. I am here asking for accountability and change. The plea agreement requires anger management, but I hope my father will consider more comprehensive therapy to address the root causes of his controlling behavior. Not for my sake, as I am establishing the boundaries necessary to protect myself, but for his own sake, and for any relationships he hopes to maintain in the future. I took a deep breath before delivering my final thoughts. This incident has forced our family to confront decades of dysfunction, and for that, painful as it has been, I am grateful. Sometimes it takes a public breakdown to create the possibility of a real breakthrough. I am committed to my own healing journey and to building healthier relationship patterns going forward. I hope my father will make the same commitment. I returned to my seat, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. James squeezed my hand, pride evident in his eyes. The judge addressed my father directly. Sir, you are very fortunate that your daughter is more interested in healing than vengeance. The court accepts the plea agreement with the following conditions: 18 months probation, 26 weeks of anger management classes, and a restraining order requiring you to maintain a distance of at least 100 yards from your daughter unless she explicitly consents to contact. My father nodded stiffly, his attorney whispering something in his ear. When the hearing concluded, my father approached under the watchful eye of his attorney and the bailiff. "May I speak with you briefly?" he asked, his voice lacking its usual commanding tone. I glanced at James, who nodded supportively, but stepped closer to my side. "Briefly," I agreed. "I didn't mean to," he began, then stopped, seeming to reconsider his words. "That is, I shouldn't have reacted the way I did at your party." It wasn't quite an apology, more an acknowledgement of poor judgment than true remorse. "Is that all?" I asked when he didn't continue. He looked frustrated, as if expecting me to make this easier for him somehow. "The company audit found the discrepancies," he said instead. "I've been placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and meant it. Despite everything, I took no pleasure in his professional downfall. "Your mother tells me she's moved to Arizona," he continued, an edge creeping into his voice. "She's abandoning me when I need support the most." And there it was, the familiar pattern of making himself the victim in every situation. "Mom is taking care of herself for the first time in 35 years, I replied calmly. "That's not abandonment, it's self-preservation." His jaw tightened. "You've turned my entire family against me." "No, Dad, your behavior did that." I stepped back, creating distance between us. "I wish you well with your anger management classes. I hope they help. But until I see genuine change and accountability, not just words, I need to maintain my boundaries." "So that's it," he asked. 32 years as your father counts for nothing. It counts for everything," I corrected him. "It's precisely because you're my father that this hurts so much, and why I need to protect myself going forward." I turned to leave James's arms supportive around my waist. "Lana," my father called after me, something almost vulnerable in his voice. "What do I need to do?" I paused, looking back at him. "Get real help, not just the court-mandated minimum. Understand why you need to control everyone around you. Take responsibility without making excuses. And give me time." Outside the courthouse, Todd was waiting with our mother. "How did it go?" he asked anxiously. "About as expected," I replied. "He's still not taking full responsibility, but at least there are consequences this time." Todd nodded thoughtfully. "My therapist says that's typical for the enabler. They see themselves as the hero of the story, never the villain." I was struck by my brother's insight. The rehabilitation program seemed to be giving him tools I had never had access to. "How are you doing with the program?" I asked. A small, genuine smile appeared on his face. "It's hard. Probably the hardest thing I've ever done. but for the first time, I feel like I'm understanding why I keep making the same self-destructive choices, and more importantly, how to make different ones. Our mother put her arm around Todd's shoulders. "I'm so proud of you," she said, and then included me in her gaze. "Of both of you. You're breaking patterns that have been in place for generations in this family." We walked toward the parking lot together, an unusual sense of peace settling over me despite the difficult morning. The path ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time it felt like we were all moving in the right direction. James, ever perceptive, squeezed my hand. "You okay?" I considered the question carefully. "Not yet," I answered honestly, "but I think I will be." 1 year later, I stood in the garden of James's parents' home, watching guests mingle on the lawn. White paper lanterns hung from the oak trees, swaying gently in the spring breeze. A string quartet played softly near the rose arbor, and fairy lights twinkled from the branches above, creating a magical atmosphere as twilight approached. Our wedding was nothing like the lavish affair I had originally envisioned when saving my $50,000. Instead, we had opted for an intimate backyard ceremony with just 40 of our closest friends and family. The money had been reallocated, some for the smaller celebration, some for the extensive therapy I had needed over the past year, and some donated to a foundation supporting families affected by gambling addiction. "Nervous?" Sarah asked, adjusting the simple pearl clip in my hair. I had chosen a knee-length ivory dress that made me feel both elegant and comfortable with my grandmother's pearls at my throat and wrist. "Strangely, no," I replied. "This feels right." Through the window, I could see Todd helping arrange chairs. He had completed his 90-day program and was now 8 months sober from gambling, working a steady job at a local publishing company and slowly repaying his debts. The loan sharks had been arrested following his cooperation with the police investigation, removing that immediate threat from his life. He attended GA meetings 3 times weekly and had developed a network of supportive friends in recovery. My mother emerged from the house looking radiant in a pale blue dress. Arizona had been good for her. She had found a job as an office manager for a dental practice and had begun taking night classes toward an accounting certification. Her voice was stronger now, her opinions expressed without the constant checking to see if they were acceptable. She had even started dating recently, a kind widower from her book club who treated her with the respect she deserved. "The florist just delivered your bouquet," she said, presenting me with a simple arrangement of white roses and baby's breath tied with silk ribbon. "And James is practically bouncing with excitement. That man adores you." I smiled, taking the flowers. "The feeling is mutual." "Your father called me yesterday," she said, her tone careful. "He wanted to know if he could attend." My father and I had maintained minimal contact over the past year, primarily through email. He had completed his court-mandated anger management classes and had, somewhat to my surprise, continued with individual therapy afterward. His company had ultimately decided not to press charges for the financial improprieties, instead allowing him to take early retirement with reduced benefits. It wasn't the professional ending he had envisioned, but it could have been much worse. "What did you tell him?" I asked, not sure how I felt about his potential presence. "I told him it was entirely your decision, that he had lost the right to assume inclusion in family milestones." She touched my arm gently. "He seemed to understand that." I nodded, appreciating her respect for my boundaries. I had sent my father a brief email the previous week, explaining that while I acknowledged his efforts toward change, I wasn't ready for him to attend the wedding. I had offered to meet for coffee the following month instead, a small step toward possible reconciliation, without the pressure of a significant event. "Are we ready, ladies?" James's mother, Susan, appeared at the door, looking elegant in a mauve dress. Over the past year, she and William had been incredibly supportive, giving us space when needed and stepping in with practical help when appropriate. They had become the parents I had always wished for, loving, without controlling, supportive, without smothering. The ceremony was simple but meaningful. We exchanged vows under an arch of white roses, promising to support each other's dreams, respect each other's boundaries, and choose love each day. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, the small gathering erupted in genuine applause. I looked out at the faces of our chosen family and felt a profound sense of gratitude. At the reception, Todd surprised us by asking to make a toast. He stood nervously, glass of sparkling cider in hand. "When I think about the journey that brought us all here today," he began, "I'm reminded of how broken our family was just a year ago. The night of Lana and James's engagement party was rock bottom for all of us, but especially for me. He looked at me with sincere eyes. "Lana, you could have given up on me after that night, and no one would have blamed you. But instead you showed me what true family support looks like. Not enabling, not rescuing, but loving someone enough to let them face the consequences of their actions while still believing in their capacity to change." He raised his glass. "To Lana and James, thank you for showing me what healthy love looks like. I promise to keep working every day to deserve a place in your lives." Later, as James and I swayed to our first dance beneath the stars, I reflected on how different this celebration was from what I had originally planned. It was smaller, yes, but infinitely more meaningful. Every person present genuinely cared about us. Every detail reflected our authentic selves, not some glossy magazine version of what a wedding should be. "Happy," James murmured against my hair. "Beyond happy," I replied. "I never knew healing could feel this good." As the evening progressed, my mother pulled me aside for a private moment. "I have something for you," she said, pressing an envelope into my hand. "It's not much, but it's a start." Inside was a check for $5,000. "Mom, you don't need to do this." "I want to," she insisted. "I should have protected your dreams when you were younger. I can't change the past, but I can support your future. Put it toward your house fund or a honeymoon or whatever you and James decide together." I hugged her tightly, overwhelmed by how far we had all come. As the reception wound down, I found myself sitting with Sarah on the porch swing, watching the last few guests say their goodbyes. "Did you ever imagine we'd end up here when you were calling the police at your engagement party?" she asked. I laughed softly. "Not in a million years. I thought I was destroying my family that night. Turns out I was actually giving us all a chance to build something real from the ruins." Sarah squeezed my hand. "That's the thing about rock bottom. Once you hit it, the only way left is up." I watched as James chatted animatedly with Todd, the two of them laughing over some shared joke. My mother was helping Susan gather leftover flowers to donate to a local nursing home. These small, ordinary moments of connection were more precious to me than any lavish wedding could ever have been. The healing journey wasn't over, of course. There would still be difficult days-old patterns that needed conscious breaking new boundaries to establish and maintain. My relationship with my father remained complicated and likely always would. But for the first time in my life, I felt free from the toxic dynamics that had defined my childhood. I had learned that setting boundaries wasn't selfish, but an act of self-love, that family could be chosen, not just inherited, that breaking generational patterns required courage but brought immeasurable rewards. And perhaps most importantly, that it was never too late to rewrite your story. As James approached with a gentle smile, hand extended to lead me to the car, decorated with just-married streamers, I stepped forward into our future with hope and the hard-earned wisdom that comes only from facing your deepest wounds and choosing to heal anyway. Have you ever had to stand your ground against family pressure like Lana did? What boundaries have you set to protect your peace and happiness? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about overcoming family dysfunction and finding your voice. Remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do is say no to toxic behavior, even from those closest to you. Thank you for listening, and may you find the courage to honor your own worth, just as Lana did.